For centuries, humanity has accepted a version of the crucifixion that may not be entirely true. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, brought to light disturbing revelations that challenged the foundations of traditional Christianity. His psychic visions uncovered layers of historical manipulation that have shaped our spiritual understanding for over 2,000 years. If you're ready to question everything you've learned about this sacred event, prepare for a transformative journey. This isn't just another conspiracy theory. These are revelations that can completely change your perception of faith, power, and spiritual truth. The narrative we've been taught since childhood paints a specific picture. Jesus was tried, condemned, and physically died on the cross as a sacrifice for humanity's sins. This version has become the central pillar of Christianity, repeated in millions of churches around the world. However, Cayce revealed that this official story is only a superficial layer of much more complex events. Psychic readings indicated that crucial elements had been omitted or purposefully distorted over the centuries. The image of the suffering Christ was carefully constructed to serve specific interests of religious and political control. During his trance sessions, Cayce described details not found in the canonical Gospels, suggesting that eyewitnesses selectively recorded events. The crucifixion has become the ultimate symbol of sacrifice, but this interpretation may have been a deliberate manipulation. Jesus' early followers possessed a broader understanding of the event, which was gradually suppressed by emerging religious authorities. This official version created an emotional and spiritual dependence that kept the masses submissive for generations. What really happened that Friday in Jerusalem may have been completely different from what we've been taught. Cayce emphasized that truth has always been preserved in esoteric circles, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The popular version of the crucifixion served as a smokescreen, concealing deeper teachings about the nature of consciousness and spiritual transformation. The physical details of suffering were amplified while metaphysical aspects were minimized or eliminated altogether. This distortion was not accidental. It was a calculated strategy to maintain power in the hands of a religious elite. Humanity was deprived of understanding the true meaning of those pivotal moments in spiritual history. The impact of this official narrative shaped not only Christianity, but all of Western civilization. Concepts of guilt, redemption through suffering, and the need for spiritual intermediaries became deeply rooted in the collective psyche. Cayce saw this manipulation as one of humanity's greatest spiritual tragedies, as it diverted attention from the true purpose of the Christ mission. The official version created a religion based on fear and dependence, when it should have promoted awakening and spiritual freedom. This distortion continues to influence millions of people today, perpetuating cycles of unnecessary guilt and submission. According to Cayce's revelations, the time has come to question this official version and seek the deeper truth. The crucifixion was a real and powerful event, but its interpretation was deliberately altered to serve human agendas. Recognizing this manipulation is the first step toward recovering the true spiritual meaning of those transcendent moments. Humanity deserves to know the full truth about what really happened on that cross at Golgotha. Only then can we free ourselves from the invisible chains that have bound us for centuries. Cayce's revelations expose how the crucifixion was orchestrated as a carefully planned political spectacle. Rome and Jewish religious leaders collaborated to create an event that served multiple purposes of social control. Jesus' trial was not just a matter of justice, but a demonstration of power to intimidate any movement that threatened the established order. Cayce described in detail how Roman authorities and priests coordinated every aspect of the process, from arrest to execution. The crowd present was not a spontaneous mass, but was carefully manipulated through agitators planted among the people. During his psychic readings, Cayce revealed secret conversations between Pilate and the high priests, showing how both knew exactly what they were doing. The crucifixion would be a public example that would discourage other spiritual teachers from challenging the established system. Jesus posed a dual threat. His teachings questioned both religious authority and Roman domination. The political theater included elements calculated to maximize the psychological impact on the masses, creating collective trauma that would facilitate future control. Every detail of the execution was planned to convey a clear message about the consequences of defying power. Before we move on, we want to feel the power of your presence. Comment below your name and from which city, state, or country are you watching us. Let's map this current of light and show how far our message is reaching. Write in the comments, and let's expand this energy together. Cayce explained that the choice of location, timing, and even the others crucified alongside Jesus were strategic political decisions. Golgotha was selected for its visibility and symbolism, ensuring that as many people as possible would witness the event. The synchronization with Passover was no coincidence, but a calculated maneuver to associate Jesus' death with concepts of sacrifice already established in Jewish culture. The leaders knew this association would create confusion and facilitate the subsequent manipulation of Christian teachings. Political theater transformed an ordinary execution into an event laden with symbolic meaning that would serve specific agendas. Roman and Jewish authorities understood the power of narratives and symbols in the human mind. They knew that controlling the interpretation of events was more important than controlling the events themselves. The crucifixion became a tool of psychological propaganda that would shape human behavior for centuries. Cayce revealed how the same groups that orchestrated the crucifixion later controlled the narrative surrounding it, ensuring that only convenient versions reached future generations. This narrative control was fundamental to establishing religious power structures that endure to this day. The political dimension of the crucifixion also included elements of occult ritual that few understood at the time. Cayce described how certain leaders used esoteric knowledge to amplify the energetic impact of the event, creating a psychic imprint on humanity's collective consciousness. This occult aspect of political theater aimed not only to control behavior, but also to influence humanity's spiritual development for millennia. The crucifixion was transformed into an energetic portal that would direct future spiritual beliefs and experiences according to the interests of the manipulators. The legacy of this political theater still influences our contemporary society through religious and governmental structures that employ the same principles of control. Cayce warned that recognizing this historical manipulation is essential to breaking patterns of submission that limit human potential. True spiritual freedom will only be possible when we understand how we were conditioned through these carefully orchestrated events. The political theater of the crucifixion was just the beginning of a system of control that has been perfected over the centuries, keeping humanity trapped in cycles of fear and dependence. Cayce revolutionized our understanding of what actually happened to Jesus' physical body during the crucifixion. His psychic readings revealed that, although the suffering was genuine, the nature of the death was completely misunderstood by contemporary observers. The sleeping prophet described how Jesus had developed advanced control over his bodily functions, allowing him to enter states of consciousness that simulated physical death. This ability was not supernatural, but the result of years of spiritual preparation and mastery over the body's energy centers. His apparent death on the cross was, in fact, a conscious transition to higher planes of existence. During the event, Jesus maintained full consciousness while his body appeared lifeless to outside observers. Cayce explained that advanced spiritual masters can temporarily separate consciousness from the physical vessel, maintaining a subtle connection that allows it to return when necessary. This technique was known in ancient mystery schools but was lost or suppressed over the centuries. What the crowds interpreted as mortal agony was, in reality, a process of conscious transmutation in which Jesus transformed physical energy into spiritual energy. The crucifixion became a spiritual laboratory where impossible demonstrations of the nature of consciousness were performed. The illusion of death was so convincing that even close disciples believed Jesus had actually passed away. Cayce revealed that this misinformation was intentional, as Jesus knew the truth would not be understood or accepted at that historical moment. The physical body entered a cataleptic state that perfectly mimicked death, including the apparent cessation of breathing and heartbeat. Medical techniques of the time were unable to detect subtle vital signs that still connected the soul to the physical body. This illusion was necessary to protect both Jesus and his followers from the persecution that would follow. Cayce described in detail how Jesus used advanced yoga practices and breath control to induce this state of apparent death. The blood flowing from the Roman spear was part of the physical purification process that accompanied the ongoing spiritual transformation. The body was undergoing an internal alchemy that changed its molecular structure, preparing it for subsequent manifestations on different levels of reality. This process of bodily transmutation was known to initiates as mystical death, a practice that allowed one to transcend physical limitations while maintaining the ability to return. The 3 hours of darkness mentioned in the Gospels represented the time required to complete this complex transformation between consciousness and matter. During this period, Jesus was navigating different dimensions of reality, experiencing levels of existence normally inaccessible while incarnate. Cayce emphasized that this was not a unique experience, but a demonstration of latent capacities in all humanity. The illusion of physical death masked one of the greatest spiritual lessons ever offered, the illusory nature of the separation between life and death. The awakening of this truth completely transforms our understanding of mortality and immortality. Cayce insisted that Jesus did not die to save us, but he demonstrated that death itself is an illusion that can be transcended through the development of consciousness. The physical body is only a temporary vehicle, and the crucifixion was a masterclass in the true nature of human existence. This revelation frees humanity from the fear of death and dependence on external saviors, restoring spiritual power to each individual. As crowds watched the physical drama of the crucifixion, Jesus experienced a consciousness completely different from external perception. Cayce revealed that in the most intense moments of apparent suffering, Jesus was expanding his Christ consciousness to planetary and cosmic levels. This expansion was not a result of pain, but occurred despite it, demonstrating the complete mastery a master can develop over the human experience. Jesus' consciousness transcended the limitations of the physical body and accessed the Akashic records, which contained information about humanity's spiritual destiny. Every word spoken on the cross carried vibrational codes that would activate awakening processes in future generations. Jesus' 7 last words were not expressions of agony, but carefully chosen mantras designed to plant spiritual seeds in humanity's collective consciousness. Cayce explained that each phrase functioned as an energetic key that would open portals of understanding at specific moments in human evolution. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, was not just forgiveness, but a reprogramming of the guilt matrix that would imprison humanity for centuries. When Jesus said, "I thirst," he was expressing not a physical need, but the cosmic thirst of universal consciousness for reunification with its fragmented parts. During the crucifixion, Jesus maintained telepathic communication with higher spiritual hierarchies, coordinating aspects of the mission that transcended that specific historical moment. Cayce described how Jesus' consciousness simultaneously extended through linear and cosmic time, influencing past and future events of planetary evolution. Physical suffering served as an anchor that kept consciousness connected to the material plane while it operated in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This was a spiritual operation of unimaginable complexity, coordinating energetic shifts that would affect the very fabric of Earth's reality. The Christ consciousness that Jesus demonstrated during the crucifixion represents the evolutionary potential latent in all humanity. Cayce emphasized that Jesus was essentially no different from other human beings, but had developed capabilities that we all possess in a potential state. During those hours on the cross, Jesus was anchoring higher vibrational frequencies into the Earth's energy field, facilitating future access to these levels of consciousness for all humanity. Every breath, every movement, every word was calculated to maximize this energetic transmission. Before we continue, if you're enjoying our content and can support our work and be part of our exclusive community, become a channel member. Besides helping us continue bringing you incredible content, you'll have access to special benefits. Click the button, become a member, and join us. The deepest secret revealed by Cayce was that Jesus used his own crucifixion as a dimensional portal to insert Christic light directly into the Earth's energy matrix. This apparent victimization was, in reality, a cosmic power grab, where a human being demonstrated complete domination over physical laws through the expansion of consciousness. Jesus was literally reprogramming humanity's spiritual genetic codes, using his own energy field as a transmitter. This conscious operation continued even after the crucifixion, establishing a permanent Christic presence in the Earth's morphogenetic field. Understanding this secret completely transforms our perception of power, suffering, and transcendence. Jesus was not a victim of circumstances, but a conscious architect of a planetary transformation that is still unfolding. Cayce warned that recognizing this level of consciousness is essential to activating our own Christ potential. Every human being carries the possibility of accessing similar states of expanded awareness, not through suffering, but through the intentional development of the soul's latent capacities. The secret of Jesus' consciousness is, in fact, the secret of our own forgotten divinity. The surviving narrative of the crucifixion passed through careful filters controlled by scribes and religious leaders with specific agendas to fulfill. Cayce revealed that many original documents were deliberately altered, omitted, or destroyed to support interpretations that favored emerging power structures. The canonical Gospels represent only a fraction of the original records about Jesus, and even these were edited multiple times over the centuries. Scribes influenced by religious authorities systematically removed references to teachings that promoted individual spiritual autonomy. The result was a narrative that emphasized dependence on external institutions rather than awakening to inner power. Cayce described secret meetings where religious leaders decided which aspects of Jesus' story would be preserved and which would be eliminated. These men understood that controlling the narratives about Jesus meant controlling the course of Christianity for centuries to come. Elements that demonstrated the human and attainable nature of Christ consciousness were purposefully suppressed to maintain Jesus as an inaccessible figure requiring clerical intervention. References to Jesus' lost years and his studies in mystery schools were completely removed to prevent people from seeking similar knowledge on their own. The process of manipulation also included the creation of doctrines that transformed teachings of freedom into instruments of control. Cayce revealed that concepts such as original sin, salvation exclusively through the church, and the necessity of suffering for purification were later inserted into sacred texts. Jesus never taught that suffering was necessary for spiritual evolution, but his teachings were distorted to support a theology that kept the masses submissive through fear. The manipulation was so subtle and systematic that few people throughout history questioned the authenticity of the official narratives. Have you ever wondered why so many Gospels written by close disciples of Jesus were excluded from the Bible? Cayce explained that these texts contained revelations that directly threatened the power of the emerging religious hierarchies. The Gospels of Thomas, Mary Magdalene, and many others were banned because they portrayed Jesus as a teacher who taught practical methods of spiritual awakening accessible to anyone. These alternative narratives revealed that Jesus established direct teaching lines that did not require institutional mediation, thus threatening the emerging model of religious control. The leaders responsible for this manipulation knew exactly what they were doing and why. Cayce revealed that many of them were initiated into mystery schools and fully understood the transformative power of Jesus' authentic teachings. The suppression was not the result of ignorance, but of a calculated decision to keep esoteric knowledge restricted to elite circles while offering diluted and distorted versions to the masses. This strategy ensured that true spiritual power remained concentrated in the hands of a few, while millions were kept in a state of spiritual dependence. The extent of this manipulation is only now being fully revealed through archaeological discoveries and psychic revelations, like those of Cayce. Manuscripts found at Nag Hammadi and other sites confirm many of the sleeping prophet's claims about deliberate alterations to sacred texts. Recognizing this manipulation is liberating, as it allows us to seek authentic truth beyond the institutional interpretations imposed on us. Humanity is finally ready to reclaim Jesus' original teachings and discover the truth about his mission and our own divine nature. Jesus did not incarnate on earth to die for the sins of humanity, but to demonstrate the divine potential latent in every human being. Cayce revealed that the Christ mission was fundamentally educational and transformational, designed to activate the divine spark within every soul. The true purpose was to establish a new paradigm of consciousness, where human beings would recognize their own divine nature and take responsibility for their spiritual evolution. Jesus came to show that the kingdom of heaven is not a distant place, but a state of consciousness attainable through inner development. The crucifixion was just one aspect of a much broader mission that included teaching, healing, and ushering in a new era of spiritual awakening. The distortion of the original purpose transformed Jesus from teacher to martyr, diverting attention from practical teachings to the emotional drama of suffering. Cayce explained that Jesus spent years preparing to demonstrate that death is an illusion and that consciousness can transcend all apparent limitations. This demonstration was not intended to create a religion based on the worship of his person, but to inspire others to develop similar capacities. True Christianity was a system of spiritual training that enabled individuals to access their own Christed abilities. The mission included establishing practical methods of meditation, healing, and psychic development that would allow humanity to evolve consciously. Cayce described how Jesus worked closely with higher spiritual hierarchies to plan every aspect of his earthly mission. The timing of his incarnation was carefully chosen to coincide with cosmic cycles that would facilitate the anchoring of higher energies on the planet. The crucifixion represented only the culmination of a longer process of energetic transmission that had begun with Jesus' birth and would continue through his posthumous influence. The purpose included not only transforming individuals, but also raising the vibrational frequency of all humanity and of planet Earth itself. The miracles Jesus performed were intentional demonstrations of abilities that all humanity would eventually develop. Cayce emphasized that Jesus possessed no powers that others could not develop, but had achieved mastery through previous lifetimes of spiritual dedication. The purpose of miracles was to expand human awareness of what is possible when one fully aligns one's individual consciousness with universal consciousness. Each healing, each multiplication, each resurrection was an object lesson in how applied faith can transcend apparent physical laws. The true spiritual purpose also included establishing a current of light that would connect awakened souls across the centuries, forming a spiritual network that would sustain humanity's conscious evolution. Cayce revealed that Jesus implanted vibrational seeds in the Earth's energy field that would germinate at specific moments in history, producing waves of spiritual awakening. This Christic current continues to operate today, connecting individuals who are ready to take responsibility for their own spiritual development rather than relying on external saviors. Recovering the true spiritual purpose of Jesus' mission is essential for the next phase of human evolution. Cayce warned that the time has come to transcend childish religiosity based on worship and dependence, evolving into a mature spirituality characterized by personal responsibility and conscious development. Jesus' original purpose was to create a humanity of awakened Christs, not a multitude of dependent worshipers. Recognizing this truth frees each individual to seek their own spiritual mastery by following the example set by the Great Master. The bloodshed during the crucifixion carries profound esoteric meanings that have been completely distorted by traditional religious interpretation. Cayce revealed that Jesus' blood was not a currency used to purchase divine forgiveness, but an alchemical symbol of energetic transmutation and spiritual regeneration. In ancient mystery schools, blood represented the life force that connects the physical and spiritual planes, serving as a vehicle for profound consciousness transformations. During the crucifixion, Jesus' blood acted as an energetic condenser that captured and transmitted Christic frequencies into the Earth's morphogenetic field. Each drop shed carried vibrational information that would program future spiritual awakenings in humanity. Historical manipulation has transformed this sacred symbolism into an instrument of guilt and control, creating the doctrine of atoning blood that keeps millions trapped in cycles of spiritual unworthiness. Cayce explained that Jesus never taught that his blood would pay the spiritual debts of others, as this would violate the universal laws of individual responsibility and growth through experience. The true meaning of spilled blood relates to the alchemical process of transforming dense energy into refined energy, demonstrating how physical matter can be consciously transmuted. This transmutation was not exclusive to Jesus, but represents a latent potential in all human beings willing to undergo similar processes of purification and refinement. In esoteric tradition, blood also symbolizes the life stream that flows through all living forms, connecting each individual to the cosmic source of existence. During the crucifixion, Jesus was offering his personal life stream as a catalyst to accelerate humanity's collective spiritual evolution. Cayce described this process as a spiritual transfusion, where high vibrational energies were injected into the planetary energy system through the conscious sacrifice of a highly evolved being. Blood became a vehicle for transmitting spiritual genetic codes that would activate latent abilities in future generations of spiritual seekers. The symbolism of blood also connects with the mysteries of sacred femininity that have been suppressed by patriarchal interpretations of the crucifixion. Cayce revealed that female menstrual blood carries regenerative powers similar to those demonstrated by the blood of Jesus, representing natural cycles of death and rebirth that mirror cosmic processes. The crucifixion was a masculine demonstration of principles that women naturally experience through their biological cycles, but this connection has been obscured to diminish feminine spiritual power. True symbolism honors both masculine and feminine aspects of divinity, recognizing that spiritual regeneration requires the integration of complementary polarities. The red color of blood also has esoteric meanings related to the first chakra and the processes of anchoring higher energies into the physical plane. Cayce explained that Jesus was demonstrating how to transmute energies from the root chakra, traditionally associated with survival and materiality, into fuel for spiritual expansion. The spilled blood represented the definitive overcoming of the fear of death and the transformation of survival energy into transcendence. This alchemical transmutation of red into gold symbolizes each soul's spiritual journey from material consciousness to Christ realization. Understanding the true symbolism of blood frees humanity from distorted concepts of sacrifice and atonement that fuel feelings of guilt and unworthiness. Cayce insisted that Jesus' blood was offered not as payment for debts, but as inspiration for others to discover their own capacity for spiritual transmutation. Every human being possesses the same alchemical potential demonstrated at the Crucifixion, capable of transforming their most challenging experiences into fuel for conscious evolution. The authentic symbolism of blood calls us to take responsibility for our own transformation, rather than relying on the sacrifice of others for our spiritual salvation. The resurrection of Jesus has been the most misunderstood aspect of the entire crucifixion narrative, reduced to a supernatural spectacle rather than recognized as a demonstration of the higher laws of consciousness. Cayce revealed that Jesus was not only physically resurrected, but also demonstrated the multidimensional continuity of existence across different vibrational levels of reality. The resurrection was a masterclass in the true nature of the soul and its ability to operate independently of apparent material limitations. During the 3 days in the tomb, Jesus was consciously navigating through spiritual dimensions, gathering energies and information that would enable later manifestations on multiple planes simultaneously. This process completely transcended the limitations of normal physicality, establishing new paradigms of existence for all humanity. The body that appeared after the resurrection was not exactly the same physical body that had been crucified, but an intermediate form that could manifest on both the material and subtle planes as needed. Cayce described this resurrected form as a body of light that retained a familiar appearance for easy recognition, but possessed completely transformed physical properties. Jesus could appear and disappear instantly, pass through walls, and manifest physical characteristics as the situation required. This demonstration revealed that the physical form is much more malleable and conscious than we imagine, capable of being molded by the directed will of a sufficiently developed consciousness. The resurrection established an energetic precedent in Earth's morphogenetic field that would make similar experiences possible for other human beings in the future. Cayce emphasized that Jesus was not unique in his ability to transcend death, but he was the first to publicly demonstrate this potential in such a dramatic and documented way. The resurrection served as a collective activation that would gradually awaken similar capabilities in prepared individuals over subsequent centuries. Each post-resurrection appearance was carefully planned to implant specific vibrational seeds in the consciousness of the witnesses, who would then transmit these frequencies to future generations. Jesus' multiple post-resurrection appearances were not random events, but a systematic educational program designed to expand human understanding of life, death, and the continuity of existence. Cayce revealed that during each appearance, Jesus transmitted telepathic teachings beyond the spoken word, programming disciples with knowledge that would be activated at appropriate moments in their future missions. The purpose was to establish a lineage of direct transmission that would preserve authentic teachings regardless of later institutional manipulation. The appearances also demonstrated different aspects of the afterlife, preparing humanity for a more mature understanding of the true nature of the soul and its multidimensional journey. Traditional religious dogma reduced the resurrection to a unique and unrepeatable miracle, when in reality it was a demonstration of universal principles accessible through conscious spiritual development. Cayce insisted that Jesus was resurrected not to prove his exclusive divinity, but to reveal the potential divinity in all humanity. The physical resurrection was only one aspect of a much deeper transformation that included the complete integration of all subtle bodies into a conscious unity, functioning beyond three-dimensional limitations. This integration represents the ultimate evolutionary goal of every human soul, demonstrating that death is merely a transition between states of existence and not the end of individual consciousness. True resurrection continues to occur energetically Whenever someone awakens to their authentic spiritual nature and transcends limiting identifications with the temporal personality, Cayce revealed that each individual awakening contributes to the collective resurrection of humanity, creating a network of light that facilitates similar transformations in other souls ready for expansion. Jesus' resurrection established a morphogenetic field that continues to influence contemporary mystical and spiritual experiences, offering energetic support to those seeking to transcend apparent limitations. This understanding transforms the resurrection from a distant historical event into a spiritual reality, available for direct experience in the present moment. The distortion of the true story of the crucifixion had devastating consequences that negatively shaped humanity's collective psyche for over 2,000 years. Cayce revealed that this manipulated interpretation created a culture of guilt and victimization that prevented millions from accessing their own spiritual power. The idea that Jesus died for humanity's sins deeply instilled feelings of unworthiness and external dependence that persist to this day. This psychological programming keeps people trapped in cycles of low spiritual self-esteem, constantly seeking validation and salvation outside themselves. The result was a spiritually infantilized humanity, incapable of taking responsibility for its own conscious evolution. The doctrine of redemptive suffering that emerged from the manipulated crucifixion normalized pain as a necessary path to spiritual purification, creating a masochistic culture that glorifies martyrdom. Cayce observed that this distortion led entire generations to seek unnecessary suffering, believing that only through pain could they achieve spiritual merit. Inquisitions, self-flagellation, forced celibacy, and countless forms of self-punishment became accepted practices in the name of spirituality, when in fact they represented unhealthy deviations from Jesus' original teachings. This mentality of suffering as a virtue penetrated deeply into the Western psyche, influencing not only religious aspects but also social, educational, and familial structures. The concept of exclusive salvation through intermediaries created spiritual hierarchies that concentrated power in the hands of religious elites, leaving the masses in a state of perpetual dependence. Cayce revealed that this structure was intentionally designed to maintain control over populations through fear of eternal damnation. Millions of people lived and died believing that their salvation depended on the approval of human institutions, never discovering their direct connection to the divine. This spiritual dependence generated not only religious subjugation, but also patterns of political and social subjugation that facilitated the exploitation and manipulation of entire populations throughout history. The distorted interpretation of the crucifixion also fueled feelings of separation between humanity and divinity, creating a psychological chasm that prevents the recognition of the divine nature inherent in every human being. Jesus was placed on a pedestal so high that he became unattainable, transforming him from an inspiring example into a distant figure of worship. Cayce lamented that this artificial separation deprived humanity of the pursuit of its own spiritual development, settling for passive veneration rather than active growth. The result was a vicarious spirituality, where people live through the experiences of others rather than cultivating their own mystical and transcendental realizations. The psychological consequences also include generational patterns of guilt that are transmitted through families and cultures, creating energetic blocks that prevent access to higher states of consciousness. Cayce observed that children born into traditional Christian cultures already come into the world, carrying unconscious programming of original sin that limits their developmental potential from the earliest years of life. This cultural programming creates internal resistance to spiritual awakening, causing many people to unconsciously sabotage their own attempts at spiritual growth for fear of challenging deeply held beliefs. The perpetuation of this historical lie continues to cause harm even in supposedly more enlightened contemporary contexts, as energetic patterns established over centuries do not easily dissolve. Cayce warned that only through conscious recognition of these distortions and the active search for authentic spiritual truth can humanity free itself from this limiting conditioning. Collective healing requires individuals to take responsibility for questioning received narratives and seeking direct experience of the sacred, gradually freeing themselves from the patterns of dependence and victimization that keep our species trapped in repetitive and stagnant evolutionary cycles. The historic moment has arrived to definitively break the cycles of spiritual manipulation that have kept humanity trapped in limiting patterns for millennia. Cayce emphasized that the revelations about the crucifixion were not offered to destroy people's faith, but to free them from distorted versions that impede true spiritual growth. Breaking this cycle requires individual courage to question deeply held beliefs and take personal responsibility for one's own spiritual development. Each person who awakens to these truths becomes a point of light in the planetary consciousness network, contributing to the collective transformation of humanity. This is not a process that can be delegated to leaders or institutions, but must be undertaken individually by each soul ready to evolve. The first step to breaking the cycle is recognizing that you possess within yourself the same divine spark that Jesus demonstrated during his earthly mission. Cayce revealed that Christ consciousness is not the exclusive property of a historical individual, but represents the evolutionary potential latent in every human soul. The manipulated crucifixion was designed to keep this potential dormant, making people believe they needed external saviors. Awakening means recognizing that each person is capable of developing abilities similar to those demonstrated by Jesus through sincere dedication to spiritual growth. This shift in perspective transforms dependent victims into conscious co-creators of their own reality. Breaking the cycle also requires courage to abandon identities based on suffering and victimhood that have been programmed through centuries of religious conditioning. Many people identify so deeply with patterns of guilt and unworthiness that they unconsciously resist any information that might free them from these limiting states. Cayce observed that true spiritual transformation often provokes temporary identity crises as old belief systems begin to dissolve. Moving through these crises with faith and determination is essential to emerging into higher levels of consciousness and spiritual functioning. Individual awakening must be accompanied by conscious action in the world, sharing these truths with others who are ready to receive them. Cayce warned that keeping spiritual knowledge to oneself can result in stagnation, as authentic growth requires service to others. Each person who frees themselves from manipulative patterns becomes responsible for helping others do the same, creating expansive waves of awakening that will eventually reach planetary critical mass. This process of collective awakening cannot be forced, but can be facilitated through personal example and the respectful sharing of transformative information. Breaking the cycle definitively also requires the practical development of spiritual abilities that have been suppressed by manipulated teachings. Cayce encouraged the development of natural psychic abilities, healing practices, advanced meditation, and direct communication with higher dimensions of consciousness. These abilities are not supernatural, but represent normal functions of human consciousness that have been forgotten due to centuries of limiting programming. Recovering these abilities demonstrates in practice that each person possesses divine potential, eliminating the need for dependence on external intermediaries. If this message touches your heart and inspires new insights into your life, know that every video we create here is made with great care and dedication. Our purpose is to spread spiritual knowledge, help more people awaken to their true essence, and strengthen this community of truth seekers. If this content made a difference to you, imagine how many souls can be enlightened with this same message. Here on YouTube, there is a simple and special way to support us. Through the button, "Thanks a lot." This is a way to show that this content has had a real impact on your life and to help us continue producing quality materials, bringing knowledge and inspiration to those who need it most. Every contribution, no matter how small, is a gesture of gratitude and love, and makes all the difference so we can move forward with this mission. But, regardless of anything, the most important thing is your presence here. Your engagement, comments, and support are the energy that keeps this community alive and growing. If you can contribute, we'll receive it with open hearts and immense gratitude. If you can't, your positive vibes and participation are already a great gift. Together we are spreading more light, more love, and more knowledge to the world. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. May your journey be filled with evolution, learning, and connection with the divine. Cayce's final call is for humanity to collectively take responsibility for creating a new era of consciousness based on authentic spiritual truth rather than manipulated doctrines. This transformation will not happen through external revolution, but through the internal evolution of enough individuals to alter the planetary morphogenetic field. Each person who breaks their own cycles of limitation contributes to breaking the collective cycles that imprison our species. The time is now, the opportunity is present, and the power for transformation resides within every human soul ready to awaken to their true divine nature and assume their role as a conscious co-creator of the emerging new earth. Edgar Cayce's revelations about the crucifixion invite us to a profound transformation of consciousness that transcends centuries of religious conditioning. Discovering that the official narrative has been manipulated should not generate despair, but renewed hope in humanity's divine potential. Jesus was not a sacrificial victim, but a conscious teacher who demonstrated latent capacities within us all. His true message was not about dependence and guilt, but about awakening and spiritual freedom that every soul can achieve through conscious development. Humanity is finally ready to reclaim its authentic spiritual heritage and take responsibility for its own conscious evolution. The invisible chains that have bound us for millennia can be broken through the courage to question, dedication to inner growth, and the practical application of true spiritual principles. The Christ we seek outside of ourselves dwells within our own consciousness, awaiting only our recognition and development to fully manifest. This is the true resurrection, the awakening of the divinity dormant in every human heart.